12:30 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. Can we start with the roll call, please?
Absolutely. President Abbas. You're here. Vice President Martin.
Here.
Alder Carter.
Present.
Alder Bennett. Alder McKinney. Alder Heck.
Here.
Alder Lemmer.
Here.
Alder Wahelier.
Here.
All right, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. Stefan, can you please make your announcement?
Absolutely. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the committee, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add pronouns after their names if they choose. Please do not alter the current naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, I don't believe we have any members of the public registered to speak. So, Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion for approval of a minute for August 3rd and 24th?
Move approval of both.
Yeah. And Alder Lemon, that's second, correct?
I think that was Alder Wahelier.
Mahalia did second? All right. Thank you. Motion is moved and seconded. Any comment on the minutes? I do not see any hand raised, so it's approved unanimously. Next is public comment. There is no public comment registered at this moment, so I will move forward with disclosures and recusal. Anybody would like to disclose or recuse? I don't see any hand raised. We will move forward to the update item, agenda item number 2, file number 67154, environmental justice grant update. Stacy, floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, so thank you all for having me here today. Thank you for the time to share out on the recent announcement of the City of Madison receiving grant funding from the EPA for a grant for a project proposal that has to do with environmental justice. So I have a very brief overview presentation I'd like to share with the group, and then I can answer any questions that you might have. Just want to make sure everyone can see my screen okay, and you can hear me okay. Thank you. All right, so last April, the EPA announced a grant opportunity through their State Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreement Program, or SEJCA. And in general, this program provides funding to eligible entities who work collaboratively with underserved communities to understand, promote, and integrate approaches to provide meaningful and measurable improvements to public health and or the environment in those communities. And of note, it was actually reopened during this time, spring of 2020, due to the COVID-19 response and prioritization by the EPA. So just kind of to give an overview of what that request for applications look like, it was to offer $1 million in total funding of 5 awards of $200,000 each. The original grant period would have been from October 2020 for 2 years. And it's important to note that the RFA was actually, in scope, was pretty narrow, focusing heavily on education, awareness, and training. And so the eligible project activities included the assessment and data collection, tool development, training, measurement, outreach, and a limited portion of your budget could be allocated to staffing support. This particular RFA had a big, in highlighted bold letters, special consideration for public education, training, emergency planning, and or investigations on the impacts of COVID-19 on underserved communities and vulnerable populations. In fact, the scoring that they proposed added additional points for COVID applicants or their project proposals that addressed COVID-19. So in this last year in spring, so in May, I initially met with the Department of Civil Rights and Public Health Madison Dane County to explore this grant opportunity. At that time, if you can all take a time machine back to what May of 2020 looked and felt like, the city of Madison across the organization was still heavily in emergency operations and emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So at that time, there wasn't a lot of staff capacity to further explore. So that being said, I actually reached out to Jessica LeClaire, who was previously the co-chair of the Sustainable Madison Committee. She also previously was a public health nurse with Public Health Madison Dane County. And in an earlier conversation with her throughout the time I spent with her as co-chair, I remember a conversation she had where she expressed the need in our community for more community health workers. So I reached out to her with this grant opportunity and said, hey, could this grant opportunity provide the seeding, if you will, of expanding community health workers throughout our community? And currently we have a model of that, which is the Sheree Wallace, who's a community health worker at the Meadowwood Health Partnership in the Meadowwood neighborhood. So with Jessica's assistance, we gathered a team to start working on this grant. So the City of Madison as the primary eligible applicant, the Meadowwood Health Partnership, the Center for Patient Partnership, Race to Equity, Kids Board, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Nursing. In our initial proposal that we submitted, we were requesting the maximum amount, $200,000, to implement a public education, training, and emergency planning programming related to the impacts of COVID-19 on environmental justice communities in the city of Madison. Our population of focus included low-income individuals, non-English speaking populations, and racial and ethnic minority populations in 2 neighborhood clusters located on the southwest and northeast side of Madison. To note, we also used, the EPA has a tool called EJ Screen. EJ Screen is an online mapping tool that can help cities better understand where environmental justice communities are located. And we use that tool as part of our application. The key objective of our proposed program was to intervene against COVID-19 by reducing transmission, increasing knowledge of prevention, transmission treatment, and community resources, as well as emergency preparedness. I think with that idea, we wanted to include emergency preparedness as, again, if we were to build out community health workers in the community, thinking a little bit about future environmental justice and or climate justice, ways in which this could, again, seed sort of those resources in our community. And I want to give a big shout out. I myself, as staff, had a limited capacity to write this grant. And when talking with Jessica LeClaire, she is an instructor at the UW School of Nursing and works with graduate students, and asked if she had any graduate students that would be willing to help with writing this grant. And she, I identified Amy Van Arsten, who's a talented writer, to step on board to this team to help with the writing of the grant. And she also reached out to a couple other additional graduate students, Yuki Lee and Caroline Moore, who also assisted. And they clocked in about 45 hours in helping the city write this grant. So I just wanted to give a big shout out. I was also on vacation for part of this grant writing towards the very end, actually, which was really, like I said, a lot of assistance from Amy to help do a lot of the meeting, sitting down to meetings with all the different partners, collecting information, collecting letters of support, and helping pull together the narrative proposal for this application. So then in September of last year, we were informed that we were not funded. by the EPA. We did get a chance to sit down with the EPA in October of 2020 to go over our proposal, to look at the various scoring, which was really helpful. We were super close to being funded, just under the scoring marker. And also a lot of the, we'll go onto the EPA Environmental Justice website to see the recipients of the first round of funding. And a lot of them are in our region 5 of the EPA. So they like to spread out the funding throughout all the regions. That being said, in June of 2021 this year, I got a great phone call from EPA. They said, hey, we're going to have another round of funding. Would City of Madison be interested in this second round of funding to do this proposal? So I went back to our previous team, reached out, a lot of excitement to do this. However, we did have to do some changes with some of the partners on the team. And I got a chance to sit down with the EPA to kind of discuss how to do an update to the scope that we had proposed a year ago. So we had new partners. The main partner switch out is Race to Equity Kids Forward no longer was able to be at the table due to their own staffing capacity. However, I was able to reconnect with Public Health Madison Dane County, and it just so happens that they are looking to work in the Truax neighborhood on COVID education and awareness. So this was a great, now that they have more capacity to work on things like this. So we include them as a new partner. Also, we also are including now a new location, working with Allied Wellness in the Allied neighborhood to expand out. So it'll be including the Truax neighborhood, the southwest side with Meadowood, and then Allied Wellness. There's also new science around COVID. So last year, our proposal was really heavy on the existing science at the time, which was droplets, surface, fomites. So a lot of the education and awareness and training was around disinfectants. The EPA, when I sat down with them looking to update this project proposal, wanted to shift now to the science of today, which is more about airborne transmission. And then also, now that we have a vaccine, a more heavy emphasis on vaccination as well as potential boosters. So those are some of the kind of the shift in focus for what that education and training will be about. It's a new federal funding source with the new administration. It shifted, so we just kind of had to shift a little bit of the proposal language around adhering to what the EPA's own pillars are as those shift per agency, per administration. And then, of course, the new grant period of starting in October of this year instead of October of last year, still for the 2-year duration. After sitting down with the EPA, we had about 2 weeks between myself and the partners to work on that update. We just submitted it to the EPA on August 19th. Waiting to hear back if they have any questions or concerns, but next steps will be working on a grant agreement with the EPA, and then working out, starting the planning process with our partners on the team. I think with that, that's all I have. Like I said, it's a brief overview, but we're really excited that that they had the second round of funding at the EPA, that we have, again, great partners across the table, a really excellent team. That was part of the RFA as well, is that the EPA really wanted it to be a coalition building opportunity with community partners. So with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing and open it up to the group in case there's any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Stacy, for the presentation. Any questions? I could start with one question. So with the EPA next round, you guys are looking into Truax neighborhood. Is there any, like, it is more driven, what area is going to be covered is more driven by the partners, or is there any other citywide policy like, hey, there is a lot of African-American community living on certain part of the neighborhood in a really old, perhaps some contamination there as well existing because of factory use or whatnot. I'm just curious about how you decide which locations is going to be used for outreach, dollar is going to be allocated.
Right. So with the original proposal I mentioned before, the EJ screen tool that we used from the EPA, we also used the underserved definition that the EPA Environmental Justice Programming uses. And so we looked at areas of low income as well as language barrier communities. And with the EJ screen, that's sort of where we kind of focused. But it was also very much also reliant on having there be a community partner in those spaces as well. So as far as the newest proposal that we just submitted to the EPA, I mentioned before when I reconnected with Public Health Madison-Dane County, hoping that a year later that they would be available to participate in this grant. And that's when I connected with Kim, who said that they were just now developing, going into the Truex neighborhood community to do with their work starting this fall. So that's where the shift went from to the location as well as the partnership. And then again, with the Meadowwood being in the southwest side, that was from the earlier proposal and from this continuing on with the updated proposal, and then connecting with Allied Wellness on the second round, coming to the table, then opened up the ability to work with the Allied neighborhood. So yes, definitely partner driven, some data driven with the EJ screen.
And just a follow-up question, probably that question is for public health. So who really managed Allied Wellness?
That was actually Jill Jacklitz with the community partnership that we already had started with the earlier grant. Over the last year, she connected with Allied Wellness, and when Kids Forward, Race to Equity stepped back, she reached out to them immediately and said, "Hey, we've got this grant opportunity. Would you like to partner?" It was a partnership that she'd been identifying over the last year.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Vice President Martin.
Hi, I thank you, President Abbas. I don't have any questions, but I just want to say, Stacey, thank you for the work that you and the team that you had the first round, all that work that you did. And then also thank you for the quick turnaround. I imagine it was pretty hard to kind of reestablish your group a year later with not long to find out what they were looking for, what you needed to put in for us to be able to get this. So I just want to say thank you for your hard work, and please make sure that you thank all of the partners that helped, especially with this second round, because I mean that's hard work. I've worked on grants before, and oh boy, so all of the praise there. So thank you guys so much for what you've done to kind of get a quick turnaround on this application.
Thank you.
Aldo Vehile.
Thank you, President Abbas. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Stacey, for this wonderful presentation. I echo what Vice President Martin said. This is really great turnaround, and doing 2 applications and 2 proposals, and still not giving up. It's really profound. So thank you. My question is, comparing the 2 proposal or applications, what are some of your learned experience or learned lesson as in the lens of the EPA?
The EP has been really, really fabulous to work with. Jacob is the lead there on this particular program, and sat down with us to go over, when we weren't funded, went through each line item to just help us understand, where our scoring was high and where we could make improvements, which then helped us with the redo of the scope this second time around. Also, the EPA is very much, understands that there would be some changes a year later, that a lot has changed in the last year, both around COVID as well as just community partnerships. So they were really understanding around that. And then also they expressed the willingness to be a little bit flexible. Things are shifting quickly with COVID-19 as new information comes through. Like I mentioned before, we're focusing on vaccination and vaccination rates and awareness and access. But there might be within the next, we have this grant for 2 years. There might be a lot of different information coming through over the next year. So they are more than willing to work with us over the next 2 years to adjust our scope as needed to make sure that we are bringing the most up-to-date information to these communities.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Carter.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't find my unmute button. Good gravy. My question, Stacy, is that you mentioned education along with the grant, and we know that there are hesitations in certain communities about the vaccinations, and so I was just wondering, is part of the education going to include mobile units to vaccinate?
That did come up in conversations around ways in which we can partner with existing efforts in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when I, got the team back around the table for this second round of funding, that was something that we threw out there as something that we really wanted to focus on. And so it is in our planning focus to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, but we're rather partnering on the same things that are happening out there, and pop-up clinics or pop-up distribution of vaccinations is definitely one of those. And I think with public health now at the table too, we will have a direct connection to some of those as well.
Wonderful. And that was, I have to echo everyone else. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Stacy. As I will echo the same sentiment my colleagues just mentioned before about thanking you for the work and good work. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. We will move forward on a discussion item, agenda item number 3, file number 66892, Civil Service Premier. Tori.
I made it all day with unmuting myself, so I had to speak with myself muted at least one meeting today. Good evening. My name is Tori. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a human resource analyst here at the City of Madison, and I get the great pleasure of working with you all in your office and your staffing needs as well. I know Karen and I were talking with Alder Abbas about just having a discussion about what the civil service system is. I think, we have folks that work with the city that have a pretty good knowledge of the civil system, and, other folks that are, what's a range, and have questions like that. So, I'm hoping just to provide a really basic overview of some of those things tonight. So I'm going to share my screen. I have just a short presentation. Can everybody see my screen? Excellent. So basically, most government structures, as I'm sure many of you are aware, we operate under a civil service system. And that's simply just a set of rules defining how we appoint people to various positions within our government. Why do we have, a civil service system? Sometimes it's a little different from what the private sector does. And basically, we have the civil service system to help prevent corruption, to ensure that we staff skilled workers, to help us have better continuity throughout our programs and initiatives. The civil service system also aids with a fair selection process and creates a standard system of compensation. Basically, what happened right away at the beginning of the United States is folks were being hired based off political appointees. So every time, leadership changed, all the positions got filled with folks that supported whatever candidate got elected. So I'm sure, as you can imagine, that created issues of corruption, that created disruption of service. There was a lot of nepotism involved and things like that. So The Pendleton Act was created in the 1800s, which established more of a merit-based system of selecting government employees. That was instituted at the federal government level, that trickled down to the state, and then eventually hit a lot of the municipalities throughout the country. What defines our the City of Madison civil service system is basically our personnel rules. They're available online, and they help define our governing board of our personnel rules. You're probably all aware of the personnel board. It helps define that. It helps define for us how we can fill positions, rules of what types of positions we're allowed to create. It creates classification policies and procedures. It outlines how we can select candidates and the process for doing that. It outlines our compensation ideas, and it also talks a little bit about discipline and layoff. Oftentimes, people will say, "Tori, why can you only refer me this many names?" I had this question today, and my answer is because that's what's defined in our personnel rules. We also, at the city, it's important to note, we have the APMs, we have ordinances, we have employee handbooks, and we have union agreements that can get into different rules that are associated with employees as well. We do have some positions that are outside of the civil service system, like the chief of staff, which would be more of a department head position, and other department head positions. We also have commissioned staff, such as like at our police department and fire department. They have both appointed commissioned staff, and then we have civil service staff at those agencies as well. Our classification system, this kind of looks big and scary, but it's not, I swear. So we have an overarching classification and compensation plan here at the city. And that's something that HR manages. With that, under that compensation and classification plan, we have various salary schedules, and they're created for groups of employees. How we determine salaries for different groups of employees are based on things like complexity of duties, what certifications and licenses are required for positions, what is the required educational level, is there leadership or management expectations of the positions, are some of the things that we look at. What doesn't determine this, which folks often get confused on, it isn't about the amount of work. It isn't because you do a lot of work and work extra hard. It's about the complexity of your tasks. The next thing we see is we break down our classification system into different compensation groups. We have several compensation groups within the city. For instance, I gave 2 examples of compensation group 18 and compensation group 20. Compensation group 18 would be a wide variety of professional staff. So that would be me as your HR analyst. That would be your legislative analyst in the Common Council office. That would be community development specialists. That would be Stacy, who just presented. Then we have compensation group 20. That's a lot of what I call like the backbone of the city staff. That's our information clerks, our admin clerks, our program assistants like Debbie, those types of positions. So we have several compensation groups in the city. And within those compensation groups, we have what's called ranges. Ranges kind of drill down a little bit more into the complexity of duties. We can have several ranges in different compensation groups. And the complexities of the duties will determine what range we place folks under. And then finally, we have the classifications specifications. That's something that I will be working on with the president's work group for positions for the Common Council office. That's an overarching description of duties related to a specific type of job, basically. And in that will outline what experience somebody needs, what the general duties are in the position, along with education level. And then finally, we break that down into very specific position descriptions. And this was what I was most familiar with coming from the private sector, right? Is everybody has a position description for their positions. We can have, for instance, we have several different kinds of program assistants throughout the city, and they're all classified as program assistants, but each program assistant within a specific department can do a little different things. For instance, we have Debbie that helps out you all with a wide variety of tasks and helps keep the office running. HR has a program assistant that helps keep the training program running, so they can be a little different. And then my last slide, I just wanted to briefly talk about how positions are created at the City of Madison. And you all see that, right, through the position studies that you all vote on in your Common Council meetings and in your Finance Committee meetings. So basically how positions are created at the City of Madison is agencies are really assessing what the needs are in their various work units. By getting staff feedback, by getting suggestions from the community. Then they work with human resources to determine what the next steps are. That could be working within the next budget cycle to get the position included in the budget. It also could look like doing a position study and doing an action either at the Finance Committee or through the Personnel Board to either create the position. We also have people that just take on additional duties that are beyond their classification, and they do that to such a degree that we would then study the position and potentially reclassify them if Human Resources determines they're working beyond their classification. Also, another way we look at positions here at the City of Madison is through our equity tools. Those have been tremendously helpful since I've been here, and has really helped evolve things like minimum experience and education requirements. We've even, done equity tools around interview questions, who should be on the panels, how we should advertise. We can use those to help actually create a position too, and make sure that position from the beginning is created in an equitable fashion. And then, finally, we go through that process that you all do. We get that approval from you. Like I said, that can either start in finance or start in the personnel board if somebody is already in the position, and then that goes all the way up to Common Council. The other thing too I wanted to say about the equity tools is just the acknowledgement is, we have good roots of creating a classification system, but sometimes when you create systems, unintended consequences can pop up along the way. And I think that's what the equity tool has done a really excellent job of pointing out is, what are some unintended consequences of the systems we have in place, and then specific strategies that we can utilize to help fix some of those consequences. I know we were going to start it earlier, but then COVID-19 hit and all the policies and working with employees related to COVID came. But what's still on our radar is to do an equity analysis of our actual position study process So that'll be next steps that we take when it comes to analyzing some of our hiring processes here at the City of Madison.
Thank you very much, Tori. Any questions? Alder Carter?
Yes. Tori, when you go back to classifications in the city and other municipalities, including the state and feds, sometimes you have a working title and then you have a classification. Can you, when you refer to program assistants having different duties depending on their departments, I'm just going to use that as an example that they could have different working titles. Am I correct on that?
You're correct. I started out in human resources actually as a program assistant for our organizational development unit. And while my classification title was program assistant, my working title was training coordinator, because that's what I did. I coordinated all the registration, all the outreach and things like that for training.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Alder Carter. Alder Vahidi.
Thank you, President Abbas. Thank you, Tori. My question is for the non-civil servant position. Who does the performance evaluation?
I think it depends on the position. Your office might be a little different. For the department heads, that would be the mayor's office. And the mayor's office does meet with folks on a regular basis and analyzes their performance. For department heads, they're on a 5-year contract too. So that if there's some deficiency in performance, that can come into play when they're looking at contract renewal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Vahidi. Any further questions or discussion? All right, thank you. Thanks, Tori, for coming and giving presentation. I appreciate the work. I just put a very light agenda on CCEC because I know Common Council agenda is probably going to go till 2 a.m. So with that, I don't want to take too much of your time. So please, if we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Thank you all. See you in an hour. Take care. Bye.